Hi, very good morning to you. Today is a very special day for the humanity, and it is the World Environmental Day. And of course, there is a slogan that is reduce or stop. You cannot stop anything or contain or find alternatives for plastics. Well, for most of us, when I say, or anybody says World Environment Day, well, why was it created? When was it created? Whose initiative it was under? These things need a brush up. In fact, the United Nations in 1972 organized a conference of global meet of at least 150 countries at Stockholm. India, of course, naturally, India had a Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, the all-powerful woman Prime Minister we had. At least that is the way we thought, naturally. So Indira Gandhi also participated in this meeting in Stockholm. It is also famously known as the Stockholm Conference. Well, a decision was made in that conference that there will be a call every year under the UN Environmental Program, UNEP, to the member nations to remind the member nations and the population and industry and administration about a pressing problem, any pressing environmental problem. Okay, this year it is, like I said, minimize plastics or find substitutes for plastics. That is the easiest way for elimination. Now, in the Stockholm conference, Mrs. Gandhi said, population is, or poverty is, the most damaging environmental cause. Most damaging. In other words, poverty will damage the environment. Naturally, in 72, India was not anywhere like we are today. The huge chunk of people were very poor, or like the new phrase, really in abject poverty. So, and the meeting concluded, resolutions were, as usual, passed. The United States government created the Environmental Protection Agency. Mr. Nixon signed the executive order creating the environmental US EPA. And India, since then, had a special focus on the environment, all the administrations of India, human environment, because without humans, there is no need to worry about or feel crazy about the environment. Because we have to be safe first, then we have to make sure that other living organisms are also secure and safe. Because, as science progressed, we all realized, thinking minds realized that, whether it is in India or outside of India, we realized that the planet Earth is the only livable planet. Well, of course, now we are looking at the Mars and other extra planets, not other planets closer to the Earth, in order to check whether we can make a settlement, a human settlement, however much artificial it is. This kind of research is going on, and we cannot stop research. Of course, America, Mr. Trump has done a very devastating blow to the research taking place. The research is actually the vehicle that will deliver the goods in future to the future generations. So going back to this, our World Environment Day, this year's slogan is plastics. Minimize plastics. I will not say you abdicate plastics. For example, I'm using my iPhone to record this show. Even this iPhone and the holder or handle I am holding the phone with, it is all, there is a good deal of plastics in this system. And also, when I say plastics, most people all over the world, not that I say, people have realized plastic is actually the so-called one-time use plastic. The one-time use plastic is actually very huge in quantity. And if you look at some record available in the web, we notice that the per capita plastic consumption annually per person, or per capita plastic consumption in India annually is only 16 to 18 kilograms. It's a very small number. Whereas compared to the global average of 28 or 26 kilogram per person per year. So that all this adds up to the huge number. Then where do we get plastics from? Well, of course, the plastics originate from crude oil. It is one of the derivatives from crude oil. And the crude oil is now the largest producer of crude is United States, followed by Saudi Arabia. And both Saudi Arabia and United States, they are not in a mood to reduce the production of crude oil, because 12 to 14% of the crude oil produced annually or every day, whatever it is, that goes into making of plastics. And all of us are very much familiar with plastics, because the packaging, the so-called transparent thin plastic cover, practically everything comes covered with, starting from our desktop, our laptop, or telephones, or the flat panel TV, to what you buy through the Amazon, many things. And then also what we buy using our food delivery systems. All these, to some degree, makes use of plastic, and that is the one-time used plastics. And that is the largest contributor of plastic pollution. In other words, what means is there are other contributors to plastic pollution also. And one of the things so far we have not dealt with is the road tire wear particles. You can make a Google search and then figure out how many million automobiles or billion automobiles are plying in the highways and roads all over the world in different countries. Every automobile makes use of some kind of a tire. Most people believe that this is all what is called made of natural rubber. True, it is natural rubber. There is a component of natural rubber. In other words, there is what is called a byproduct from the refineries are making the plastics, while making the plastics, coming out, which is consumed by the tire makers. Well, by the strict definition of the term, the plastics that go into making of the tire, car tire, truck tire, or whatever, that will not fit well with the definition. But still, because of the ubiquity of this non-biodegradable material, man-made material, and its particle size from very well fits in with what is called microplastic. Microplastic, as most of us know, it is 5 millimeter in diameter to 1 micrometer or micron in size. But the danger is these so-called plastics, or the so-called plastic pollution, can affect, well, everything under the sun. In the sense, the lower atmosphere has particulate matter, including the so-called tire particles, as well as other plastic particles. Then you look at the soil has it. Then look at the waters, definitely water has it. Look at the ponds, look at the rivers, look at the oceans, all has plastic. And 24 or 25% of all plastic made in the world ends up in the ocean. Well, we may say that the ocean is huge, so there is no harm. There is a shortcut. All those fish or seafood we eat, the fish and other marine aquatic animals, they unintentionally ingest what is called plastic particles suspended in the water during their feeding process. And where do they end up? Well, definitely it will go through the gut and finally to the seafloor. But a large chunk or a small chunk, depends on how you look at it, that will remain in the gut. Or if it remains in the gut, there is plenty of chance that it will enter the system, the living system of the marine life. So what happens with marine life? We all know it is going to come back to our dining table, and we are going to enjoy a seafood dinner or a lunch or even a breakfast. So what we do? We also ingest the microplastics. And what does it happen? And what happens to these microplastics? We ingest inadvertently, well, something not very serious until recently. Because, see, the research, okay, let me go through this. What happens? It goes to the intestine. And we all believe that whatever goes into intestine will go out to the flushing toilet. Yes, it is very true. But the point is, a large chunk is only going out. That is what we see. If it doesn't go out, we complain and we go to a prescription medicine and then we ease ourselves. But what we as an average citizen do not know is the so-called microplastics can now go into the body, inside of the body tissues. But all the vital organs will be affected. There is a phrase or word called inflammation. It is a medical term, it is used in the medical practice. Inflammation is sort of how body fights against any attack by bacteria, virus, or injury or whatever, in order to help us to get rid of, to escape from, to this what is called injury through the organisms or through the accidents. Then there is a second one called oxidative stress. We all hear a lot about antioxidants. In other words, our system is always under oxidative stress as long as it is alive. Life is there in the our system. And it is a process or an outcome of our being alive. So this oxidative stress is actually in the long run harmful to our health. So what we got to do is we have to minimize the oxidative stress. What happens is, what is the role of our plastics, microplastics? They actually contribute to inflammation and oxidative stress. The rest is algebra, whatever that happens to us. So then what else happens? Look at all the tire wear particles or particulate matter. Huge tons. And all the tire wear particles are in the soil. Initially where is it? It is on the road pavement. In the first rain, it will be washed off. Or in the second rain or the seasonal rain, the road surface will be very clean. Again, what happens? Every time we press the brake, every time we stop the vehicle, there is a mark left by the... Look at the airport. Most of us these days have been to some airport for some purpose, see off or receive or ourselves to fly, or just to see how it takes, the vehicle takes or the airplane takes and lands. So the point where it takes off or the point where it lands, that is actually a huge hit of 80 or 70 tons of load on the 6 or 8 wheels. And these wheels, what they do? They leave a mark. That is a huge volume of what is called tire wear. And in fact, all the airports, the maintenance staff, periodically wash away and remove the tire wear particles. In other words, if there is more tire wear particles, the chances of skidding while braking or slowing down are very high. So in order for the guaranteeing the safety, the tire wear particles that are attached to the runway at the takeoff point as well as at the landing point, they are periodically removed all over the world, including the Trivandrum airport. So what happens to this tire wear particle? Again, it finally gets into our system. Only thing is the way, the path is different. For example, somewhere I have read the Trivandrum Airport Authority or the Adani group, what they do is they not only wash this tire wear particles off the runway, then they store it separately, do not let it go out. Well, of course, that's a fine statement, but there are problems we see every day. In other words, we are very known, we are a very known place, Kerala or India, for waste mismanagement, not management. That is actually spoken in the evening sessions by ministers and people like ministers or an authority. But actually, even though they talk about waste management this way, that way, and the other way, what happens is waste mismanagement. So finally, danger is all the particulate particles, microplastics and nanoplastics, all of them reach the ocean, then from the ocean to the ocean seas. Life in the ocean and our food of tomorrow resides in the ocean. In other words, we have practically cultivated all the cultivable land in the continents. Now the United Nations slogan itself is go for seafood. In other words, preserve the ocean, coastal ocean, in its quality, and then only the survival of the organisms, including aquatic life, will flourish, and then it will come back to our dining table. So if as a society, as a nation, as a community of nations, is not very careful enough about preventing the plastic pollution, ultimately it will boomerang into our society. See, for example, even in spite of the what is called the no, what I shall put it this way. Even in the Upanishad days, there was a slogan, Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. What does it mean? It is one earth, one humanity. We are all together. We got to be together. And most interesting thing is, even in the so-called Upanishad days, even though the planet Earth is not probably considered as a spherical Earth or oblate spheroid, there was a humanity and there was a planet. And we have only one planet, and therefore we have to take care of the planet as many ways as possible. Government of India in 2016 has passed a legislation making it responsible for the producer of the plastic to contribute to or get back the plastics for their disposal, scientific disposal. But then what happens actually in theory is wonderful. What happens in practice is not so wonderful. So what is the solution? Well, reducing the making of the plastic. Well, the oil countries like Saudi Arabia is deadly against reducing plastic, because their 14% share of the crude oil going into the plastic industry will have a yearly death, and naturally their revenue is lost. That is the problem. Well, of course, I'm not blaming only Saudi Arabia. America, under the new president, also has this kind of idea in mind. So, as a nation, as a society, as an individual, what we can do is, as far as possible, make use of reusable plastic. That is one, because it's unavoidable. Number two, as everybody else has been saying earlier, use a cloth bag. That's it. Carry the bag to the store, buy whatever you want, and bring it back. And ask the shopkeeper to keep off from your package anything made of plastic. And now, what most people do not realize is, if you went to some, what is called Tattagada, let us say, in other words, a fast food place, and you order some food, and it all comes in some kind of glittering, silvery, whatever package, and it is sealed, heat sealed, and given to you. Most people think that it is not plastic, but if you want to know whether it is plastic, take the empty material, take out the material, then try burning it. See how it burns, whether it burns like our cloth, cotton cloth, or plastic. Secondly, what we also do is, we make use of a lot of plastics in our own household, and we are breathing the particles released by the what is called the household whatever, and it goes to not only to our lungs, it finally goes to the brain. Testes, lungs, brain. Everywhere. Latest research reports that microplastics are in all these places, and they are going to harm us, at most. In other words, it will speed up the cognitive function of the brain, or it will add up to the infertility, or it will add up other such diseases. So it is not only a national or international necessity. Avoiding plastic, minimizing plastic, substituting plastic is a personal urgency. Thank you for listening.